Are you a podcaster? Maybe you've got that big idea and you're looking for a network to join. The multi-award-winning Ozcast Network can get your content to eyes and ears all over the world. Join now for the first month free, and you could be featuring this sound at the beginning of your podcast.
Ozcast.
Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.
Did you know you can advertise on podcasts?
Don't act like you're not impressed.
Find out more at podvertise.com.au. That's podvertise with an s.com.au. Ozcast.
Well, just 24 hours after setting a new world mark for T20 dismissals, overtaking MS Dhoni, if you don't mind, this champion has been good enough to join me on Greats with Garby, the niece of the legendary Ian Healy. She has only enhanced the status of the Healy name as a superstar of women's cricket in Australia and one of the household names of a team adored by so many. She is a 5-time T20 World Cup winner, 2-time Women's T20 Cricketer of the Year, an ardent golf playing partner of her husband Mitchell Starc. She is Alyssa Healy, and she's with me now. Alyssa, hello to you.
Hello, thank you for having me.
That intro match your expectations?
Yeah, always got to get a little bit of golf in there. So I'm happy to talk about golf for an hour and a half if you like.
So am I. I'm a golf nut, so keen to get some insight on the battles you have with Mitch, which we've seen a bit of over the journey. So some stories on that will be great later on. But timing is everything in cricket, as we know, and the timing for me in this regard is fantastic because congratulations, you've broken MS Dhoni's record for the most dismissals in T20 cricket just 24 hours ago. An accolade that I don't think you saw coming in the post-match yesterday, but one that's been celebrated as it should. How's it sitting with you now?
Yeah, it's a strange one. It's a strange sort of feeling, but obviously a really nice one. It's not something that you ever expect when you walk out there with the gloves to be sort of put your name alongside MS Dhoni, that's for sure. But like I said yesterday, I think it's more of a reflection on our bowling attack and how good it's been for a long period of time that, I get gifted these opportunities and miss some every now and then. But, being given the opportunity to keep to some of the best bowlers in the world. So, it's definitely a nice one to have.
Everyone's been rallying around you, as they should. Any special messages of congratulations? Has MS Dhoni got involved himself?
I haven't seen anything. I haven't heard from Uncle Ian either. I think he's probably just a bit shirty that it wasn't him. But no, I haven't looked too much into it. Obviously, it's been nice to see the support on social media in particular. Wicketkeepers often go fairly unnoticed unless you do something really poorly or something sensational. So it's nice to see that all the wicketkeepers are getting a little bit of love at the minute.
And you won the series convincingly as well, which I know would be the most important thing for you. And it must just be so relieving to get the summer up and going again. Yeah,
it's been great to get back out and play some cricket, that's for sure. I know that Cricket Australia and New Zealand Cricket worked incredibly hard to make this series happen. And, I feel like we've put on a half-decent show with 4 games still left to go in this little one-off series. So it's been great to get back out there. Obviously, an incredible effort from our team. I think that's the 10th straight T20 series that we've won since 2017. So it's for a format that's incredibly difficult to be consistent at. We've managed to do that over the last few years, which is super impressive. And it's just a simple fact that we've had a really good core group on the park for a long period of time, and they've done the job pretty well.
So you've played 112 T20s, 73 one-dayers, but only 4 test matches. Looking through your statistics, I was really surprised by that. I know that it's played less compared to the other formats, but I was surprised by how few test matches you play compared to the other formats of the game. Why is that, and how big of a frustration is it, if at all?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I remember my first ever day in Australian camp back in 2009. Belinda Clark stood up in front of everyone and said, we won't really be playing Test cricket much anymore, or the only format we're really going to play is T20 cricket. I remember sitting there being the most disappointed person in the world because all I ever wanted to do growing up and all I ever really saw was Test cricket on the TV, and all I wanted to do was get a baggy green and play Test cricket for Australia. So to get that news in your first day at camp was obviously disappointing, but it's just the way that they've marketed the game. Obviously, T20 cricket had just come in at that time, and they really wanted to push women's cricket forward, and that was naturally the way that they were going to do it. So we always thought that maybe one day it'd come back around in a full circle and we'd get to play test match cricket again. And unfortunately, it hasn't panned out that way, but at least we get to still play it for the Ashes. It makes it even more special. I know that when you've put the two baggy greens next to one another in the household, Mitch is disgusting and has been worn way too many times and covered in beer, and mine's still in pristine condition. So it does make it extra special for us when we get the opportunity to play. You know, we always have a couple of debutantes every test match, so it's always a really exciting fixture. But hopefully one day there's more and more talk of other countries potentially wanting to play that multi-format series and sneak a test match in. I think why not? Obviously, it's an investment from all the organisations, but it's the ultimate test of your cricketing ability and skills. So we'd love to play it as much as we can, but at the moment, you know, T20 cricket's a bit of fun and we're enjoying that.
Yeah, exactly right. And you're so successful at it, and it shouldn't take anything away from what you've achieved in that format. Do you think it's something, though, that the players might start pushing themselves? The players from a range of nations might come together and say, all right, we want to play more test cricket. Let's get together as a group and actually put some pressure on for this?
Yeah, I hope so. I know that there's a few mumblings within the England group that they didn't really want to play the test in the Ashes, which is a little disappointing from my end. But I think it has to start at domestic level first. I know there's some great conversations within the ACA that I'm a part of here that how can we potentially sneak some long-form cricket into our domestic schedule? And even if it's 2-day cricket or 4-day cricket, I think, like I said, it's the ultimate test of your cricketing skill, and it's where you really learn to play the game and learn to develop your skills. So if we can sneak it in somewhere in the domestic level, then obviously there's going to be a bigger push for it at the international level as well. But I'd love to see the Kiwis come and play a test match. I think it'd be a really cool contest. I think it could naturally happen. We could definitely play a multi-format series against them, and I think that'd be super exciting and make it a yearly event. And I mean, the boys have the Boxing Day test. Why can't we have sort of a New Year's test at North Sydney Oval? You know, like we had against the Poms a couple of years ago, where Pez made 200. So it was an amazing spectacle with the pink ball under lights. So, you know, if we could make something like that our own, I think it'd be really special. Yeah, and the interest in women's cricket has just gone to a whole different level over the last 10 years or so, that it feels as if it's crying out for that. And hopefully it happens sooner rather than later. And we'll speak about that development and all the great achievements in a moment. But let's go back to where it all began, to where the cricketing love started for Alyssa Healy. Obviously, there's some obvious tie-ins with your uncle and your father, Greg, who played for Queensland as well. It was part of the squad. But what's your earliest memory of falling in love with the game of cricket, albeit in a family that was so deeply entrenched in it? It's funny you say that, because everyone just naturally assumes that having the last name Healy, that, you know, you were pushed into cricket or that's just something that you did. But I didn't want a bar of it. When we lived up here in Queensland, I just played soccer and I played every other sport I could, and didn't really have any interest in cricket whatsoever. And it's only when we moved down to Sydney when I was 7 that a friend from school actually randomly said, "Oh, I'm going to go down to the local park this weekend and try the Kanga cricket," as it was called back then. It's now like T20 Blast. Do you want to come? And I thought, oh, okay, like I'll come along. It's not really something that interests me, but, you know, I'll give it a go. I play every other sport, so why not? And went down there, and turns out I spent most of the time in the sandpit. I wanted absolutely nothing to do with cricket. Dad had to keep running down the hill and get me out of the sandpit and put me back onto the cone where I had to hit off with the bat. But yeah, it's just I sort of fell into it from there. It was right from then that they signed me up to the local cricket club at Carlingford Waratahs there in Sydney. And one of the guys that was running the little Kanga cricket program, I think he was the president of that cricket club, and they signed me up from there, and off I went and just started playing cricket. So it was probably a little bit more fate than anything else that put me into the game. But I sort of just fell in love with it, I guess. It wasn't necessarily something that I wanted to do. I never really dreamed of playing for Australia. It was just like a constant in my life. Like I said, I played every sport, but cricket just seemed to be there every summer, and just went and played with the boys and did my thing. And yeah, it's a sort of a strange story, but I guess I'm pretty happy that it panned out the way it did. I mean, it only took me 3 games to become a wicket keeper. I wanted to be a fast bowler, but they threw me the gloves in game 3 in under 10s, and I was stuck from then on. So unfortunately for me, but yeah, it just, like I said, it just was a constant for me, and something that I just found myself being picked in teams along the way, and here I am still playing cricket.
And we're grateful for that. Did they throw you the gloves because your surname was Healy, or did you think, oh, I better fill in here because of the connection with the family?
I'm fairly dubious about it, because it was like a typical under 10 averages cricket. Everyone had to have a go at wicket keeping at some point. You had to experience all of it, and all I really wanted to be was a fast bowler. And, you know, I was literally the shortest person in the team and the only girl. So, and that was never going to happen. But, yeah, they oddly threw me the gloves very early in the rotation, in like week 3. And I'm pretty sure the next week I was playing up an age group, and because one of the boys was away. So I think the gloves got stuck to me very quickly. But I'm grateful that I became a wicketkeeper, because let's be honest, my bowling's shocking.
What's it like growing up with the Healy name? When you start to make a name for yourself, and you've obviously got ability, and everyone can see, all right, you know, you've an excellent talent in your own right, but you're attached to the legendary Australian wicketkeeper. What's that like to live with? Is it a bit of a burden or a blessing?
I've never really seen it as a burden. I could see why people ask me that question and, you know, and want to talk to me about it. But for me, I often always joke that, you know, when I was playing underage cricket, would the selectors have looked twice if my last name was Smith? Like, all of a sudden you see a young Healy behind the stumps and they're like, oh, we better go watch her because she might be half decent. So I always thought that, you know, it was kind of a really cool thing. And most of my early career, I was, you know, being referred to as the niece of Ian Healy, and it's sort of shifted in the last couple of years that, you know, all of a sudden he's my uncle. So that's been kind of cool. But look, you couldn't ask for a better person to learn off, honestly. I think it's opened his eyes a lot, like seeing me playing cricket, and opened his eyes to women's cricket, which is something that he'd never really, you know, come across a lot throughout his career. So he's always been number one fan and on the end of the phone and ringing me if things going, you know, well or poorly, and someone to chat to. So from that point of view, I've been really lucky that I've had a resource like that within my own household that I can contact.
Great to hear. And what about playing with the boys? Were there any moments there that were actually disturbing in a sense? Any sort of abuse that you may have copped beyond the banter where you thought that's just, and so many other successful female athletes would have gone through similar things, where it did become a little bit unsavoury?
Not one bit, to be completely honest with you. I've been really lucky, and look, I was a massive tomboy growing up and still am to this day at the age of 30, that it did not bother me one bit that I was the only girl there. Elise Perry was in the age group below me in the same club system, so they knew that there were 2 girls running around playing boys cricket there in Sydney, and it didn't bother me at all. I loved it. I thrived on that challenge. In particular, when I started to get a little older, sort of 14, 15, 16, the boys noticeably got a lot bigger, stronger, started to bowl a little faster. And I still remember, I think I was filling in a couple of games for the under-16s where I played rep cricket and my dad was coaching and the wicketkeeper was missing that day. So I came back and played with the boys, and there was a big, quick bowling for Parramatta. And I think I was down to bat at like 7 or 8. Dad's like, don't worry about batting, just come in late in the order and have a slog, but we just need a keeper. And I remember going into bat at 4 that day because none of the boys wanted to go out and face the big quick running in there. So I loved it. I loved the challenge. I think ultimately playing cricket at Barker in that first 11, I often talk about that really changing my cricket for me. I think, you know, I played a lot of 2-day cricket there. The boys bowled outside off stump all day. I had to leave the ball, learn how to cover drive properly, and I learned how to really play the short ball really well, because ultimately that's where they wanted to bowl at me. They saw me as a threat and wanted to bump me and wanted to get the girl out. But I really enjoyed that challenge, and I think it really developed my resilience and developed my cricket along the way.
Wonderful story. Yeah, in 2006, speaking of playing for Barker, which you mentioned, you were the first girl to do so among the boys in the private schools competition. There was an email that went around from some pinhead saying, save Barker cricket now because there's a girl playing in the first 11. So a bit of negativity. What was that like? Because it did garner a lot of actual media attention outside of just the school, didn't it?
Yeah, it did. It was probably the first time that I'd really felt, you know, a sexist thing against me, and that sounds so bizarre because, I was always the only girl playing in all these teams, and I'm sure all the parents had different opinions that my mum and dad had to cope with. But for me, I was just one of the boys, and to the boys, I was one of them as well. So it was sort of the first time that was a really eye-opening experience to me that, people really had issues with that, and people genuinely think differently to what I do. So it was a strange experience. We always found that my mum and dad, traveled a lot for work when we were growing up, and we always found that when my grandma came to look after me, some scandal would happen, and that happened this time. My grandma was looking after me, and get a knock on the door at 6 a.m. and it's Denham Hitchcock throwing a newspaper in my face, asking me if I wanted to comment on it, and I'm standing there in my pajamas, wondering what the hell's going on. And he said, I'll give you 5 minutes to have a look at this newspaper. And anyway, there I am. There's a big headline of Osama bin Laden, and then next to it is a photo of me in my Barker school kit next to two of my mates with a cricket bat. So it was, it was a bizarre time. But in saying that, the school was amazing. They handled it brilliantly. I said from the start that if I wasn't good enough to make that first 11, that don't pick me. I'll play twos, I'll play threes, wherever you see me. And ultimately got picked in that first 11, and we won the Shield that year. So old mate who sent the email can suck it, I suppose.
You can do one. What about Grandma? What did she make of the whole furor?
Oh, it was remarkable. I was kind of happy that day because I didn't have to get the train to school. I got dropped there because there was media literally at every entrance to the school, and they didn't want me to get swamped on the way from the train station. So I was the happiest 17-year-old going around that I got a lift to school. And poor Grandma, she had to cope with a bit that week, but handled beautifully as always.
Absolutely fantastic. As you did, obviously playing for the school, and then your breakthrough comes. I mean, you're in the New South Wales team not long after, and a couple years after that, you're in the Australian team. The ascension to the top, did it feel dramatic or like a hard slog?
Yeah, it's a weird one. It's like I mentioned before, I just sort of found myself in all these teams, and that might sound really silly coming out of someone's mouth, but I just found myself being picked, and I was playing, and the Aussie one was a little bit strange as well, because naturally being a wicketkeeper, you feel like you've got to bide your time and wait for an opportunity. And Leonie Coleman was still there, Jodie Fields was there as captain, wicketkeeping as well, and I thought I was going to have to wait 10 years for an opportunity, but lo and behold, Jodie has a significant injury, and I'm on a plane to a World Cup in the West Indies in 2010. And that's like one of the biggest moments of my career. And at no point did I think I was ready to do that. But here I am playing on the biggest stage. So yeah, it was, I wouldn't say it was a hard slog. I thoroughly enjoyed myself. I won't lie. It's not that I didn't exactly put a lot of thought into my cricket back then. I was just enjoying myself and enjoying, I guess, living off a little bit of talent. But it's definitely shifted a lot for me throughout my career. I've had to work really hard at my game. I've had a few wake-up calls along the way, being left out of sides here and there, but ultimately it's been good fun.
But winning that 2010 World Cup as a 20-year-old, 10 years ago, what an experience that must have been for a youngster who's found herself at the peak of women's cricket in Australia. What are the standout memories from that campaign and that triumph?
It was like a Kentucky tour for me. I thought I was absolutely living the dream. Here I am in the West Indies, a place that I would never think to go to on holidays growing up. It was such a late withdrawal from the tournament from Jodie that I was Jodie Fields everywhere I went. So I got my single room for the first 5 minutes before Alex Blackwell came and kicked me out and had to go and room with somebody else. So I was absolutely living the dream. My mum was there. She was back on the rum. She said she hadn't had rum since she was a teenager. So from that point of view, it was a lot of fun. But yeah, what an experience for a 20-year-old to travel to the other side of the world and be put on the biggest stage under the pump so young. And I think, looking back on that, I did learn a lot about myself. I learned a lot about the game of international cricket and, what we could achieve as an Australian side, really young. And I'm forever grateful for that opportunity. I enjoyed myself, played some interesting knocks with the bat. I remember the super over against England in that last round game that ultimately knocked them out and sent us through to the semi-finals. And being a part of that win was something special. But yeah, I think one of my fondest memories was that it was obviously a joint tournament. The boys are playing alongside as well, and we actually played our final after the men's final, which I still think was one of the best decisions that the organisers had made, because the crowd stayed. They were still partying from the men's game. They stayed and watched our final, and the boys sat on the balcony and watched our game as well. And ultimately they didn't win, but we did. And to see how pumped Michael Clark was for us, even though he just lost the final, to see him excited, come into our change rooms after and just talk about cricket with us was such an amazing experience. And whilst I didn't make it out to the nightclub, my mum was waiting for me at the nightclub, and I didn't quite make it because I thoroughly enjoyed myself in the change rooms. It was just an amazing experience for me, and such an eye-opening one about international cricket.
Brilliant. Great stories. And you've gone on to win 5 T20 World Cups since. I want to speak about the 2020 version because there are so many stories there. But en route to becoming so dominant, did the Australian team try and assert that dominance on the field? We speak so much about the men's team and the sledging and putting the trouble they got into aside for now, that the Australian team always trying to basically flex their muscles, if you like, and show that we're the best in the world when they were at their peak. Do the women's team do that as well? Because you have every right to, considering the amount of success you've had. Or is it a different culture?
Yeah, interesting. I think a slightly different culture within our side. I think we speak more about probably playing fearless cricket, and I think naturally when we're doing that, we're enjoying ourselves because we're actually having a good time doing it. We're going out there, we're trying to consistently push the boundaries and, break records for scores or, wickets or, keeping teams to low scores, etc., like things like that. So for us, we just go out there and see what we can do and push our bodies to the limit and see what we can achieve. So slightly different probably culture in that regard. And I think when we're genuinely playing fearless cricket that, we're being really successful because, we're out there, we're doing our thing. And like I said, we're trying to push the boundaries. So it's a really fun side to be a part of it. We're so different individually off the field, yet we gel so well together. Everyone hangs out. There's no sort of cliques within the side. People just hang out with whoever they want to or by themselves or whatever you want to do. But once we come together on the park, we just gel really well as a side, and there's no egos. Everyone plays their role and we just get it done. So there's no real talk about how we assert our dominance. Yes, we want to puff our chest out. Yes, we want to, I guess not really act like the number one side in the world, but play like the number one side in the world. And I guess that's probably how we do it. It's not necessarily coming out of our mouths. I think it's more so what we're doing on the park.
The 2020 World Cup was just so highly anticipated, of course, here in Australia. And I think we saw just how far not only women's cricket has come, but women's sport has come when there was so much talk around your form leading into the tournament. You were under pressure. Your form had dipped a bit. This was a home World Cup. Australia had to make the final at least because of all the hype around the crowd that was expected. And I, for one, found it so refreshing that we were analysing your form and debating your form and almost putting pressure on you rather than just talking about the crowds and just talking about how good this might be for women's cricket, actually analysing the individuals forensically. You were the subject of it all, Alyssa, but did you find that refreshing in a way, that how much things had shifted?
Yeah, it was a great, obviously I don't like being the centre of it and them analysing my batting and how poorly it was going, but it was fantastic for me to read that people genuinely cared about our side and how we were performing, and they were worried about how we were playing our cricket going into that World Cup, which, fair play to them. I think we were under an immense amount of pressure, an immense amount of scrutiny, and because ultimately we needed to be there on March 8th for them to achieve what they really wanted to achieve, getting that crowd in. So, yeah, look, I found it really cool that people were wanting to scrutinise my form and talk about cricket, not just what's happening off field, and talk about how we were playing. So it was, refreshing, and it was almost like the next step for women's sport in this country, that we were highly scrutinised. And like I said, them wanting to talk about the actual game of cricket that we were playing. So it was good fun. It was water off a duck's back for me. I didn't feel under any more pressure. I know personally that I play a fairly high risk game. I try my best to limit the risks that I play, but in saying that, I hit the ball in the air. I'm bound to provide opportunities to the opposition, but ultimately I'm trying to get my team off to the best possible start, and that's me being aggressive. So it doesn't come off all the time, but I knew that in the big situations, if I just trusted my ability, that it would come off and obviously help the team.
And you certainly did that. You got through that form speed hump, if you like. I mean, 75 in the final, player of the match. But just leading into that final, how much pressure did the team actually encounter? Did you actually feel like, all right, this is maybe getting to us just a little bit at times during the tournament? Maybe not on an individual level, but as a team, as a collective.
You know, it's funny. By the time we actually got to the final, there was no pressure whatsoever. I think getting through all the games previous to that, the pressure was there. And, you know, we felt it. We blatantly lied about it in the media. We blatantly lied about it to ourselves. But we did feel it. We were under a lot of pressure. People expect us to win. People expect us to win well. But World Cups are a whole different beast. Sometimes you've just got to, you know, grit your teeth and just get a win regardless of how it looks. And I think we did that against Sri Lanka. We just held on for that win and sort of showed our class at the end of the day with the bat to get ourselves over the line. But, yeah, look, by the time we actually got to the final, it was all pressure off. It seemed like all the pressure was going to end up being on India, that, you know, they had to come up against Australia. We had 86,000 people there. I think 80,000 of them were going for Australia for a change instead of the 17,000 that we had at Spotless Stadium, that, you know, 15,000 of them were going for India. So all of a sudden everything sort of fell our way and all pressure was off. We just went out there, had massive smiles on our faces and enjoyed the day and ultimately played some really good cricket.
Yeah, that you most certainly did. And then you had a concert to behold afterwards with Alyssa rocking, of course, the MCG, which was great to see. It looked awesome, the concert afterwards. Where were you? Where were you in the crew behind, of course, everything that was going on?
Yeah, the Katy Perry concert was next level. I thought, you know, we thought we were never going to experience anything like that. I think the first question that people asked once we found out we were in the final was, can we dance with Katy Perry afterwards? And everyone was laughing about it and joking about it. Never did we think that it was ever going to happen. But here I am in the mosh pit down the front without any shoes on whatsoever, with a couple of friends that had flown down from Sydney to watch. And it's pitch black. I'm still in my full black playing kit. I don't know how Max from ICC found me, but he said, mate, you better get around backstage. You're going on stage. And I said, no way, no, we're not. And he said, yes, you are. Quick, I'll run you around there. So he grabbed me, ran me around the back, and all of a sudden we're queuing up, waiting to go on stage with Katy Perry. And I was nowhere near the middle, nowhere near the front or center of the stage because I can't dance. All I did was sort of live out some childhood rock star dreams and was high-fiving all the kids in the front row and enjoying myself that way. So it was just an unbelievable experience. So gracious of Katy to allow us the stage, or allow Sophie Molyneux in particular the stage. And, yeah, just cap off what was an unbelievable day for us.
I almost called her Elise Perry because she's on the mind, of course, in the subject. But yes, it is Katy Perry, and it was brilliant. Just wonderful scenes. And, you know, what that does for young females coming through, of course, is enormous. How aware are you of that? Because it seems like such a tangible thing, the influence that you have. And it's not just the cricket team, it's the Matildas and the Opals and all the different women's sporting teams, considering the boom in women's sport over the last 10 years. How aware are you of the tangible impact you have on individuals that come and watch you and all of a sudden have a sporting team and a sporting person that they get genuine inspiration from?
Yeah, it's taken me a while to sort of come to terms with it. I think I was sort of enjoying being a nobody, just doing my job behind the stumps and walking off quietly. And, you know, Elise Perry and the Meg Lannings of the world were taking all the limelight. That suited me nicely. But, yeah, I think you see it now more so, you know, obviously when you play in the WBBL and when you're playing here at home in international cricket, you see the young girls, you see the young boys in particular coming out and watching, and they're not bothered that it's women's cricket. They just want to come and watch cricket, and they know exactly who you are and what you're doing, and they want to be like you. And that's such a bizarre thing for me to ever experience. So it's good fun. I think for me, what I sort of try and do the most is be myself and show them that you can be yourself. You can be an international cricketer and still be a normal human and go out there and, you know, live a normal life, but ultimately be living out your childhood dream as well. So yeah, it is fun. I love seeing the smiles on their faces when, you know, you get the opportunity to meet them. My social media gets hounded with requests. I see them all, and in the direct messages that, people want videos for their friends' birthdays, or they want help with their schoolwork and things like that. So it's kind of cool, and it just enables me to, I guess, help put smiles on other people's faces as well, which is something that I really enjoy doing.
Fantastic to hear. And through this boom, we've seen certain individuals go to a whole new level. I mean, Elise Perry, obviously, yourself in the cricket team. There's a number of others. The Matildas have so many big stars, but obviously Sam Kerr's on a level of her own. Is there ever any issues in regards to that? Any jealousy, perhaps, or dramas within the team when some players are being demanded so much more than the others as a result of this boom that's going on? Is that an issue that perhaps you have to work through as well?
Look, I could definitely see where it could take place, but I don't see it within our cricket side. I think, like I mentioned before, there really is no egos within our side. I think everyone genuinely wants to play with and play really well for one another. And I can see where that might happen, but I think the female athlete in my mind over the last 5 years has changed. I think, yes, it used to always seem to be some sort of topless front cover shoot that, a semi-average female athlete that looked really good was on the front cover. But now they genuinely want people who are really good athletes and are really good at what they do. And I think that's been really cool. And to see that shift that, they want to talk about the sport, they want to talk about what you're good at, not just necessarily what you look like. So I think seeing that shift and being a part of that shift has been really special. And I think a lot of sports now are sort of really pushing the women's side of their games. And, women make up 50% of the population. So why naturally wouldn't we want to market the women's game in whatever sport it might be? I love watching the NRLW on the TV, the AFLW, all these sports that are now giving young girls the opportunity to see people playing and see a future for themselves. And I think that's unbelievably exciting.
Yeah. Is there a bond there between the national teams? So many of the players, of course, have played for, look at Elise Perry, for the Matildas and the cricket team. And we see in the WBBL and AFLW and with the W League, there's so much crossover. But do you feel a real bond between the other national teams as well, almost as if you're on this mission together?
It is really cool to with sporting teams. I know that there's a little bit of crossover. When we were training at the SCG, there's a lot of crossover with the Sevens girls in particular, and they love their cricket, and we love watching the Sevens. So naturally we used to cross paths all the time and get coffees, or sometimes I'm running laps around while they're training in the middle, and I remember catching someone's long bombs that they were trying to find touch with, so I was catching them as I was running. So, incidental little bump-ins like that, I think it's amazing. I think what women's sport has done in this country, and I guess all the athletes that are a part of it bonding, I think has really created a real strength and helping one another out. I think I'm a part of I'm a Nerva network that, links young female athletes with, ladies who have been in the corporate world, and it tries to help the young athletes, I guess, with their life outside of their sport. But I think one of the best parts about it is that I've got to bond with some other female athletes that are doing exactly what we're doing. And it's great to share war stories along the way, and I guess laugh about different things that happens while you're on tour. But I guess that's a really special thing for us that we've got. And I feel like we're all trying to help one another, promote each one another's games, and ultimately we want to see all the female sports successful in the country.
And what about the relationship with your husband, Mitchell Starc? He's obviously so prominent in Australian cricket as well. You discussed the connection you have with your uncle Ian and talking about the game of cricket. How deeply do you and Mitch get involved in each other's cricketing pathways?
I'd probably give him way too much batting advice for our marriage to handle, but honestly, we don't actually talk too much cricket. I think we sort of leave that to the experts that surround us. Fortunately, I'm not a left-arm quick bowler, so I don't know too much about that. And whilst he was a wicketkeeper growing up, he leaves that to my expertise. So, yeah, we fortunately share a lot of hobbies outside of cricket that can keep us away from it. I think ultimately we sacrifice one another's sanity by supporting one another when we can. So our life is literally 95% about cricket. So as much as we can get away from it together, we do. So we leave the chat to the coaches.
Where did you two meet? How did you meet?
We actually played cricket together growing up. So that rep team that I mentioned earlier, me coming back and playing, we actually played together since under nines. I think we started. So we played cricket together growing up. We shared the wicket-keeping duties for the first, I think, 3 years of that side. We used to split it 50-50, and then he started bowling a little bit after that. So we've known one another a long time, and it's sort of been fun to grow up with.
I've had the pleasure of watching Australia on international tours a number of times and watched a number of net sessions. It is actually scary watching Mitchell Starc bowl in the nets. Never mind facing him. Like, I cannot comprehend. We're going to speak about golf in a minute. There's a couple things I can't comprehend in sport. One is how professional golfers are so good. Another is how batsmen face bowling like Mitchell Starc's and other bowlers at that pace. I just can't get my head around it. Do you ever keep to him or anything like that, or face him at full pelt? How do you go?
God, no. I often say that to journos that ask me that question of, do you face Mitchell? I said, would you willingly go down the other end of that net and do that? And they're like, no. And I was like, so why would you think that I'm any different? We actually, obviously, we played together growing up, and he was never a quick bowler coming through. He was actually quite short and slightly wider than what he is now. He sort of stretched the other way later in life. But we ended up playing a charity game. I think we were about 18. We flew up to Brisbane and played this charity game up here, and we hadn't seen one another for a couple of years. I'd stopped playing with the boys, and he'd just got a rookie contract, I think, for New South Wales. And anyway, we jumped out onto the field, and I had to field the first little bit and kept the last 10 overs of the game. And on comes Mitch to bowl, and here I am at AB Field, standing way too close. The first ball hit me in the chest because I had no idea that he'd gotten so much quicker than obviously what he was when we were playing together. So I ended up moving back about, I reckon, 8 to 10 metres and took the next one sort of up above my chest as well. So it was a weird experience, but fortunately I haven't really been in the nets too much to him. I've jumped down there when he's come back from injury a few times, but the ball bounces way too high for me. I'm only 5'5", so I don't want anything to do with that.
It's an amazing thing to watch it at full flight, and it's been great to see him have so much success, and your two careers coincide so well in that regard. The golf rivalry, though, that's what I'm keen to talk about, because I know that it gets pretty intense. It must be a pretty cool thing to have as a husband and wife combo. It's
funny when normally when I'm on Zoom meetings at home, it's in front of our trophy cabinet behind us, and sitting right in the middle, front and centre, is the Steely Cup, which is the most prized possession in the whole household. There's World Cup trophies, there's Belinda Clark medals and whatnot sitting there, but the Steely Cup is the most prized possession in the household. So yeah, it's good fun. It's we obviously love our golf. It's something that gets us away from cricket, and it's something that we can do when we're touring the world. We go and play some amazing courses, and when we holiday together, we take out clubs wherever we can. So we ended up coming up with a system one day. We were having a beer after the round at our home club at Longreef and thought, we're two competitive people. Why aren't we playing for something here? Like, what are we doing? So we ended up coming up with a fairly complex FedEx Cup point sort of system with home and away fixtures and international fixtures and points for winning, etc. So it's intricate, but at the same time, it's really fun. And I am such a sore loser, at the best of times. And it's not great when I have to lose the Steely Cup. Mitch is the current holder of it. I won the first 2 years and he won last year. But it's always good fun. We really enjoy the contest against one another. And ultimately, I think it's improved our golf, so it's been good.
That's unbelievable. What are the handicaps? How many shots do you have to give one another?
Yeah, well, at the moment I'm off 4 and a bit, and Mitch is off, I think, 7 and a bit. So I have to give him shots, which never goes down too well. But he always gives me a mulligan around. So normally I hit one straight off the tee into the drink in front. So he'll give me another crack at that. So I take that. Even though I have to give him a few shots.
Unbelievable. I saw the other day that Ash Barty, who's played WBBL, obviously won tennis majors and just won her club championships in golf. I mean, and you play off 4 and you're one of the best women's cricketers in the world. Do you ever sit back and think, wow, how lucky am I to be born with these natural sporting gifts?
Well, I guess I am. I'm lucky. I wish I liked arts and culture, but unfortunately I've got sport running through my veins, so I'd rather be outside in the sunshine. But I tell you what, Ash, winning the the club chance at Brookwater is like one of the hardest courses that I've ever played on in this country. So it's a fair effort from her, but she's got a beautiful golf swing. So we're still trying to tee up a game between her, myself, Kari Webb, and I think Hannah Green wants to team up with Ash, and I'll be with Kari. So keep your eye out for that. Hopefully we can make that happen one day.
Hopefully. That'd be great to watch on TV, so someone should get behind it. But when your cricketing days are over, a question that's just come to me, have you thought about maybe giving golf a serious go? Would you like to maybe push that when the days of crouching behind the stumps are no longer?
You know what? I've genuinely always thought about it, and Mitch is always like, I'll caddy for you, like, let's go and do it. But this COVID break has taught me one thing, is that I am not going to be a professional golfer because it is so hard. And like you mentioned before, you don't know how they're so good, but I've learned a lot about myself as a golfer in this 6 months that I've had of downtime, and holy dooly am I not doing that. So look, I'll walk around Long Reef Golf Club all day, and I'll play in as many Pro-Am events as I can, but I don't think you'll ever see me on any sort of professional golfing tour. I am just not good enough.
I get the feeling, though, Alyssa, that winning the Steely Cup means more than winning, let's say, the US Open to you.
100%. Yeah, the Steely Cup is the pinnacle. Like, I feel like if Kari Webb ever wanted to win a trophy, it'd be that one. So, she hasn't got her hands on that.
No, she hasn't. The name Steely, where's that from?
Oh, it was Starc Healy at the time. We weren't married when we came up with it, so it really should be the Starc Cup now. But that's actually been named as the new cup in the household. So Mitch's brother Brandon and his wife Laura's just started playing golf, and I think she's got maybe 5 months left of learning the game before we actually start the Starc Cup. So that one will take pride of place in the mantle somewhere as well.
Absolutely magnificent. Thankfully, though, you've got many more years of winning big trophies for Australian cricket to come. Alyssa, it's been wonderful talking to you. So many great stories, an inspirational journey for so many young athletes coming through, but one for all sports fans to just sit back and enjoy. So thanks so much for sharing it with us.
No worries. Thanks for having me.
All the best, Alyssa. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are you a podcaster? Maybe you've got that big idea and you're looking for a network to join. The multi-award-winning Ozcast network can get your content to eyes and ears all over the world. Join now for the first month free, and you could be featuring this sound at the beginning of your podcast.
Ozcast.
Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.